I'm here with Nathan and his lovely service dog, Sylvia. So Nathan, do you want to tell me a little bit about how you got Sylvia?
Well, there are several different ways that someone can go about getting a service dog. There's some people self-train, some people go through service dog agencies, and that's the route that we took, and that's probably the one that I'd recommend for most people, although there are some very successful self-trained service dogs. For her, the place that I got her from, which is Susquehanna Service Dogs, it's in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We applied to get a service dog because I have Asperger's, which is a form of autism, and we were put on a waiting list for a while. And then when they were ready for us, they brought us in to meet some demo dogs, and then they brought us into a meet the dog session where I interacted with some of the younger dogs that had just finished up with the first parts of their training, and they selected Sylvia for me, and then a few more months later I went in, had a training program to learn how to use the dog, and we were assigned together, and we've been together ever since.
So what was that initial feeling of when you got to bring her home?
Well, it definitely, there's a lot of satisfaction there because at the time I was 11, almost 12, and usually a lot of people with autism at that age, they aren't able to have the service dog directly assigned to them. Sometimes they're assigned to a third-party handler. But I was, my parents really pushed me to make sure that I had her assigned specifically to myself. So it was definitely a sense of satisfaction that I was able to do that. And there was also a lot of nervousness. Like the first time I walked into my school with Sylvia, I was so nervous because I was thinking, oh, everybody's just going to be thinking, why does Nathan have a dog randomly, but eventually the nervousness subsided. I got used to it. My classmates got used to it, and it became a really good experience.
How did your life change before and after having Sylvia?
Drastically. There's according to my parents, it was night and day. Autism affects sensory receptors in someone's brain, which means that they're a lot more sensitive to stimuli, which means that I can be a lot more distracted. And Sylvia was able to help me with that through sensory relief, deep pressure therapy, creating a physical barrier between myself and what might be stressing me out. And at one point, my parents went into a parent-teacher conference, and they talked to my math teacher, who was like, oh yeah, Nathan, he has been so great. He's been paying attention. He's always on task. And my parents were like, Nathan Selove? Our son? Are you sure we're talking about the same person? So huge change.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone that wants to get a service dog?
I would say a service dog is definitely not for everyone. It is definitely a very long-term commitment, and it is a lot of work. However, I would say that if it does end up being a successful partnership, that it can make a world of difference in people's life, and I highly recommend at least researching it, at least looking into it. Yeah.
So what is the most important thing about someone who maybe doesn't know much about service dogs? What's the most important thing that they should know?
The most important thing to recognize is that a service dog is there for their partner. They're not there for everyone else. So it's best to just leave them alone, to not distract them. I can't tell you how many people come up and try to pet her without permission, and that distracts her from her job. Like, I mean, if someone's driving a bus, you don't throw a ball at them and say, hey, play ball, that person needs to concentrate on their job. And it works very similar for service dogs. So I would say just try to ignore them.
Have you ever had any weird experiences with someone trying to pet her when she's working?
Oh God. So a few weeks ago, there's this guy that came up to her. I was judging at a speech tournament, and it was a judge there, and he walks up to her, and he looks at the patch, because there's a patch on her that says "Do not pet," and he's like, "Is that for real?" And I was like, "Yep, it's for real." And he's like, "Oh, your vision seems fine," and I was like, different disability. Service dogs aren't just for blind people. And then he was like, "Oh, okay. So can I pet her?" I was like, "No, she's working." And you got to be patient with people like that, because I'm sure that he wasn't doing it out of vice, but it is But it is something that people need to realize, that there's a certain decorum that you need to have around service dogs. And I don't want to demonize people who break rules, but I also want to make sure that they're educated so that they know that they really can't just treat a service dog like a common pet.
Well, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone learned so much about service dogs. And when we come back, we're going to get to hear another song by Rachel Kimberlin.